Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's video is an album review on Iris's debut album called Disconnect, which came out in 1999. So Iris was a synth pop band from Austin, Texas, and they formed in 1993. This was their debut album in 1999. And then they disbanded just recently in 2021 after their last album in 2019. Iris is a band that I've wanted to check out for a long time. I've just never come across their music, but I've heard people mention them as a good American synth pop and new wave band, and I've been wanting to check out them for a long time. But I figured, with doing a focus month this month on different subgenres in electronic music, like new wave and synth pop, I figured this is the perfect time to do it. So going to review it here today. This is the first time I've heard this album. So there's 10 tracks on it. We'll play a sample of each track and you'll see my score above it, and then we'll reconnect at the end of the video and I'll give you my thoughts on it and talk a little bit about it. Alright, let's check out the first track.
I am returned again. It's just something you can't see. The single thing I fear the most within, gathering slowly up inside me, ready. And all dries out. It's something that saves your life. Lately, when I go outside, the skies cry that the worst is over. Is this the place we are supposed to be? Something is reaching out to me. Should I be walking back or forward? Is the weight enough to make you go down on your knees? something to hold on to. Believe in the powers that you fight, while all of it's still in view. And all of it's close on every side, and maybe you're not so easily led or big on mystery. You're provided to yourself and to this night. Twilight, love starts falling so close to the distant world, are you the home I have? My orbit has me thrown to the boundaries of the mind. We're pulling in on every rope we're thrown, and crossing to the time when direction leads the willing to the light. Every bit of my heart, but the words don't speak for the feelings under. Tune into the program over the seas of my heart, to the way I live my life. Sophisticated love surrounding us, and though it grows undear, holds the silver. If I'm out of touch and need reminding, just tell me I have been found. I'm walking to a new dimension. I have left familiar ground. All the things I do, they may seem to you as false behavior, but I can't really change your mind. This is my time, any you would not understand. I've become blind, have I lost my mind? Yes and no, but Annie, would I lie to you? I've got control, this is my show. Listen to me, Annie, would I lie to you? Somebody from my hands with enough illusion, they have let me out to play. When you see me lie back in temptation's arms and have it all my way, I still have my name, I still have my face. I have not run away from home. Does it seem so wrong if I now embrace every single thing I've never known? I've become blind, have I lost my mind? Yes and no, but Annie. Strange replies falling in from every odd direction. Truth and lies come together on the lines and cut off my connection. I'm receiving final indication. I'm aware my time is simply running out. I'm the next in line to see the fountain come to rest or empty. I'm waiting to see, to love the same as you. Don't say I'm all surrender, even though you know it's true. The danger is the danger is the shame. I can't say danger is the shame.
we got a chance to check out a sample of each track from Iris's 1999 album, their debut album called Disconnect. Overall, I think it's a good album. The vocals are pretty good. I think the music is good. I think it's an above average American synth pop band for the time, or sounding album, I think. I'm happy to hear for the most part they stuck, or maybe they didn't choose to kind of fall into some of the pitfalls of late 90s electronic music and using a little bit too much newer sound and trying to make it sound too edgy. Like, they're still, for the most part, they're focused on smooth, melodic, good, strong rhythms, and they're successful at it. There's only a couple tracks where they sort of, kind of go a little bit too trancy with a little bit of the sounds, or maybe the too electronic, too techno-y for some of the songs, like Twilight, like the bass line, and it's just, it's a difficult time, and I feel like the decision making in a lot of 90s production decisions, whether to sound more vintage or sound newer and more hipper or updated, is what killed a lot of the bands in the late 90s and early 2000s. Like, you put yourself in perspective of 1999, you're a synth pop band, you're influenced by probably your usual Depeche Mode and New Order and stuff like that, and you want to honor them, and you like the sound, and you want them to sort of make something like that, and you go way over too board of trying to make it sound different or cool or up to date, or try to bring the old sound into the new sound. And this doesn't do too much of that, which I think is successful. I think the bands that kind of went overboard, like those kind of albums sound really dated right like today, as far as like, I mean, I even think of like Nine Inch Nails, like their late 90 albums are just trying to sound too like rock and too industrial for the time, like trying to sound a little, and they kind of lose a little bit of what made their style good, or their early albums better. It's just it's a fine line, and when there's just sounds in the middle 90s to late 90s. If you decide to use those sounds and try to be like fresh and new with the sounds, you can run the risk of it sounding bad. And there's a lot of bands in the 90s that fell for that. And unfortunately, like, you look back on it and it doesn't sound that great. There's definitely a feeling like, this band reminds me of like an American version of Wolfsheim, or Camouflage, or And One, or maybe Cause and Effect. Like the track Saving Time sounds very Cause and Effect. But overall, it's good upbeat, good choruses. The changes are good. There's good melodies. Everything flows really well. I can't really fault anything too much. I think the beats are a little bit dated, but not that bad for 1999. And I mean, it could be a lot worse, like I was saying. I'm not a big fan of late 90s engineering. I think the entire industry went fully digital and didn't quite understand it, thinking everything is the same in digital, and the same practices and sounds and mastering and sounds like, and everything sounds like it's through a phone line. Like late 90s, like there's like the dramatics are very hollow, and the depth is very like, it's not very dynamic, and it's just everything sounds not to the extreme of the early 2000s where it's just like super loud in the middle of 2000s, but from an engineering perspective, everything is very, I don't know, just very dry. And there's not too much effects on like sounds still, but there's still newer sounds, so they kind of all have like a lot of electronic music has like a tinny sound to it. And I think a little bit of that here. But I think the decisions of a band like this to be either retro or to break new ground, it's a tough decision. Like track one, I feel like is a bad example. Love, Losing, Wanting. I think it was a pretty good track, 5.5 stars, but it seemed to sort of try too hard. And then you have a track like The Picture, the last track, smooth, good chorus. Doesn't feel rushed. Nice piano, nice melody, good vocals, good instrumental. It just flows well. It's a good song. You know what I mean? Like this, there's some songs in here that sound maybe a little bit too. I wouldn't say trying hard, but they just don't. They're just not of the level of some of the best songs. Like I feel the best songs are "Endless," "Saving Time," and "The Picture," which I gave 7.75 stars, 7.5, and 7.25 stars. "Saving Time," for example, a little bit more reserved, like the fade out. I think this would be even better if they re-recorded and dropped a few of those 90s choices, like the guitar could be better, the sort of ravey electronic part could be better. But I like the melody and the fade out, and it's a good track overall. "Endless" is probably my favorite. I think it has the best chorus, and the Picture is probably the most complete track. Those three are my favorite. But there's good harmony in here, good energies, good melodies, and vocals, all in that order, with a beat, rhythm, supporting sounds, are being supportive, kind of like they should be, and not over the top. You kind of wish that, or at least I wish, like Aha would have went this direction in the 90s versus going more of a rock pop sound. But I always have I always thought of like what if Aha had better producers, or what if Aha wouldn't have tried to been so rock and pop and try to sell albums, or I don't know, or sell out or something like that. Like, there was such promise on Aha's debut album, "Hungry Like a Wolf," or Hunting High and Low, that when they got their second, third, fourth album, it's just, I don't think they lived up to that first album. And even though some of their later 90s and early 2000s stuff was good, I don't think they ever really were able to recapture what their first album did, or what their first album sort of hinted at. And I feel like listening to a band like Irish in this album, Disconnect, like I feel like Aha could have easily been like this. Now, of course, that's their decision to sort of do what they want, but if they would have stayed in the more synth pop way, I feel like they might have been in this kind of realm and sound like this, and I think they would have been probably done it even better, considering Aha's vocalist talent, and and their abilities to write great songs. I feel like they could have been even better than this. But there's some obvious standouts in here. Maybe there's a couple songs that sound a little too familiar. There's really only one ballad or change, and that's the track number 7, called "Danger Is the Shame," which is a nice change of pace. It's a little bit more mellow, but not one of the best tracks of the album. In fact, it's probably the least. Looks like it's the lowest scored album or song on the album. So, unfortunately, the album really doesn't have the balance that I would hope to kind of get it into the 70s and higher range of being a very good album. Just doesn't have the balance. But, I'm glad I got a chance to hear it. There's 3 or 4 tracks in here that I'll definitely keep in my playlist and play often with my synth pop and new wave playlists, or if I, DJ out at some, new wave event or something like that, I'll definitely play a few of the tracks off here. But yeah, I think there's some good melodies and some good songs in here. Just wish for a little bit more better balance, and maybe a few choices to maybe keep in the. I think they did a good job of keeping it more traditional than being updated at the time, and trying to be too flashy and too new and too electronic. And I feel like they stayed in the, for the most part, they stayed in the kind of new wave vein, and that was good. But I do feel like there could have been some better choices on a few sounds on different tracks here and there, whether it be the bass line, or the main synth lead, or the melody, or what have you, or the beat. There's just certain things that maybe could have been done a little bit better. But I think overall, I give it a 64 out of 100. Right in the middle of good and very good. I think it's a good album. The good thing is there's no song on here that's even okay. They're all at least pretty good, and most of them are good. And then I have 3 of them that are very good. So it's a pretty consistent album overall, and I think it's especially I think it's maybe even underrated for an American pop synth band in 1999. I'm just trying to remember of like 1999, like who was doing music like this in America. Like it was, by 1999, the synth pop and new wave were pretty much over. I mean, everybody was sort of doing different styles, or especially if you were in electronic music, you're probably doing like techno or house music, and there was some bands out there doing synth pop, and I think for the above, considering I've really never I've heard this band, but I never really heard the album, and never really came across a song of theirs. It is kind of underrated for the time, and I do think it's well above average, especially for an American synth pop band in the late '90s. And again, I think it's good that they stayed away from the pitfalls of engineering and mastering for the most part, in this album, and the melodies and the songs are there, and the vocals are above average too. Everything's on the good. I sometimes I focus a lot on the what could be better, but that's just because I don't want to just do a video and just say everything's good, because I don't think anybody wants to hear. I think everybody wants to hear a balanced review, right? I mean, I try to remember that. I get off track all the time because I don't really rehearse these, or I don't really write down great notes to read from. I don't really, predict what I'm going to say or plan it out. I just kind of do it from the whim. I do a few notes on there to kind of keep myself in line as best I could, but I don't. I try to keep the reviews balanced, though. And I just want, if I feel like I'm being negative on some things, it's just because I want the best, and I pick out those things because I feel like I probably could have been a producer in a different life. That's just me, but everybody has their own opinions, and I think it's best to hear a review that's balanced. Like to say everything's perfect or great and just move on, and not have anything that's constructive is fine and all, but it's not the way I want to do my reviews. I don't think it's very interesting to hear everything that's great on an album and just don't mention what could be better, or compare it to what's out, or what was been out, or what's out now, or what have you. But yeah, overall 64 out of 100. I think it's a good album. That was Iris, their debut album called Disconnect. And if there's something that you'd like me to review in the electronic music genre, whether it be a song or an album, you see my email down there in the notes section. Just shoot me an email. I'd be curious to know what you would like to recommend for me to check out and review. But thanks for your support, and thanks for watching the channel, and I really appreciate it. And have a good rest of your day. We'll see you on day number 13.
Electric Cafe.